Hello, everybody, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Benchwarmers Sports Talk podcast. As always, I'm Labi, and I'm joined by Jacob. Jacob, how are you doing today?
I'm well. I'm on March break, so I got some time off to kind of relax and compose myself.
There you go, big flex on all the high school students. You
Big
won't have March
flex.
break until April.
Has suck it
Uh,
loose. Did you actually know that there's only going to be 6 teaching days in April this year?
Welcome to school in
2021.
a global pandemic.
Cause you have March April break, and then you have an Easter in there, and then a Good Friday, and then you have the end of the school year. The quad, I guess.
Hey, that works for them. And you know what?
Yeah.
Fair enough, you know.
Yeah, I mean,
Because
honest.
normally March is a busy month, and honestly, this month's going to be even more hectic.
Yeah, 100% for sure.
And yeah, for those of you who are listening from the United States, it's like also spring break kind of time for them as well. So
Don't
hopefully
go
you
to
guys are enjoying
Florida.
some rest and enjoying it safely, which is probably one of the main topics that we want to talk about today.
No Florida, no Atlanta, no Alabama, Texas, no Texas either.
Yeah, and so today we have a cool topic. We have some hot takes prepared, some of our best hot takes, because those always go over well and get so much publicity. And so
Yep.
you got to tap into that. And I mean, if Skip Bayless could make $32 million by just saying the dumbest stuff about LeBron
So,
James that's just not true,
so I
then
have I have another podcast. It's literally called the Hot Take Podcast. It's literally all it is. It's just our intro is literally we're just a bunch of amateurs, jack shit of what we're doing. So it's basically the same thing here.
yeah. So literally Skip Bayless.
You
um,
can be I'll be Skip. You can be Shannon. Because
All
the
right, so
Bucks
I
won.
just got to work on subtly insulting the other person without him realizing it, because I swear that's all he does the entire time,
I'll
and it's
just tell you how
really
much of an
funny.
idiot you are, and I'll say how right I am.
It's my turn to talk. That's
I've let you talk. It's my turn.
oh, that's the best clip. Uh,
No.
but yeah, before we get into some hot takes, there's a couple of big topics that we need to discuss, and well, let's talk about, since we were talking about how COVID is still affecting people's lives. The NBA, of course, made the announcement, a couple of months ago, that they were going to do a normal All-Star weekend,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that the initial response to that was, that's such a dumb idea. Like, if you want to name an All-Star team, fair enough, but you don't need to actually fly to a centralized location and play an All-Star game.
Yeah, exactly.
And lo and behold, what's ended up happening, the All-Star game's a couple hours away as of time of recording. Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, due to contact tracing, will not be participating. Is it a conspiracy theory because Zion gets to start in the All-Star game now?
Oh my
I mean,
God, Zion Williamson is starting this All-Star game.
yeah, just in case you were wondering how much the NBA is kissing his ass.
Oh my good God. I didn't realize it was him substituting in.
Yeah, so Zion is going to take the spot of Joel Embiid in the starting lineup.
What about Ben?
I don't think Ben Simmons was a starter.
Oh, okay.
So I think that because he was just a reserve, he's not going to play. And then, like, whichever team he got drafted on, I can't remember whether it was Team LeBron or Team Durant, they'll just be one player short.
Oh, okay. Well, it's not like it matters anyway. It's an All-Star game. How really serious do you think these guys are gonna play?
Well, yeah, and that's the point. I think, like, there are two key parts to an All-Star event, and the first part is it's like honoring the players for their accomplishments and naming them
Mm-hmm.
to the team. And then the second thing is it's like a spectacle that you put on for the fans. It's one of, like, the premier events of the that the sport puts on, right? But I mean, I don't think you really need to put on the a spectacle part of the event, because of, obviously everything that's going on in the world. And so obviously I don't have a problem with them naming an all-star team, right? But the
Hmm.
whole thing about actually going and playing, and that's also led to a whole lot of controversy because obviously every time an all-star team is named, there is going to be controversy about did they make the right decision and everything. And
Right.
the fact that there's been so many replacements due to injury or due to people like faking an injury because they don't want to play, which is like 100% what I would do in this case. Which is why, on a whole separate notion, a lot of Raptors fans weren't voting for Raptors players because they didn't want them going to the All-Star game.
And it's not like the Raptors aren't dealing with their own COVID issues right now.
Exactly, and it's actually worked out perfectly because the Raptors were in so much trouble because of COVID protocols the last couple of weeks. They had to play the Boston Celtics with like 8 players.
Yeah, they had to pull out some guys from the G League.
Yeah, but then you see the whole thing is like, okay, well, Anthony Davis isn't playing. Okay, who's going to replace him? Okay, Anthony Davis is getting replaced by Devin Booker. Okay, oh, now Devin Booker can't play. Who's he going to be replaced by? Oh, he's going to be replaced by Mike Conley. Meanwhile, DeMar DeRozan's just standing there like, I still exist.
Yeah, he was pretty pissed off when he wasn't chosen to be a replacement, and I would be too.
And
He's still
rightfully
performing.
so. I mean,
Yeah.
I honestly think DeRozan deserved to make the All-Star team like straight up.
Well, I, I
And
mean,
then
I yeah. Oh, yeah. You could definitely make that argument for sure.
and then there's 2 injury replacements and he's not either of them. Like there's definitely a whole lot of weird stuff going on.
Well,
But then the whole point is too beyond that. It's like, now you're going to look at the effect of throwing this event and I mean, I don't know.
how many players do you think either get COVID or have to sit out because of COVID tracing after this? Like, I
Yeah,
say,
well,
yeah,
we've already seen 2, and then beyond that as well, it's like, and I know the NBA is not throwing these events, but like if you put an NBA All-Star game in a city, people are gonna go to that city just for like the events that are going on, and so like there are huge parties being thrown in Atlanta, and like yeah, the NBA are not planning them, but I think they're like they obviously have to hold some of the blame and hold the responsibility on that because
well,
they
yeah,
know that if you're bringing we're bringing all these NBA players and like rappers because they had that like I didn't even know they had that like celebrity 2v2 tournament last night
yeah.
because I was watching UFC, but like I had no clue that was going on. But like really, we need to fly out like Lil Baby and Jack Harlow to Atlanta to play some like pickup basketball.
Don't get me wrong, Jack Harlow's a funny guy, and I actually enjoyed. He like pulls. He like all the time. He does this. He pulls up to like basketball courts in Kentucky where he came out of, and he just plays with them. So I mean, I understand. I don't think it should have happened. I think it's a publicity stunt. That's all it is. It's for money because the NBA has lost so much already.
Oh, 100% that's the reason why. But and then like you said, you have to hold them responsible for it because like you said, even if like one person gets affected because through COVID with this, then I think you have to hold the NBA responsible for that because they're choosing to hold this publicity event and
Well,
all of that.
I think they know the risks going into this, and I think they understand the risk going into this. I just don't think they care at this point.
Oh,
Um,
100%.
well, Silverman, Silver. I don't think it's Silverman. I think it's just
Yeah,
Silver.
Silver, Adam Silver.
He's already said he wants to go back to a normal season next year, starting in October. So he's kind of basically. I don't want to say he's given up on this season because obviously he hasn't, but he's already focused on the next season. Well, look at like the MLB. Obviously, their season is starting. They're going to play a whole 162 games, and the NHL is just concerned on this season, which I think I still stand by the fact that I think the NHL has done the best job of doing what they've done. No cases in Canada or in the North Division. They played every single game they were scheduled to play, while the U.S. is just kind of a shit show right now.
Yeah, for sure. But obviously, I mean, it's a lot easier when you're managing 7 teams versus when you're managing the other 24 that are in the U.S.
Yeah, no,
But
100%.
I think I generally agree with you on that. I think the one thing that the NBA is concerned about is if you look at the conversations that have been had with the seasons that have taken place in like the bubble format or with the shortened games or whatever, I don't think anybody is questioning the Tampa Bay Lightning Stanley Cup. I don't like
Right.
I have not heard one person say, "Oh, that doesn't count. It was fake. It was a bubble." Like,
Oh, it
but
was
you know how many
easier.
people exactly. You know how many people have questioned And once again, like personally, I think it's because the Lakers won, and a lot of people are LeBron haters and are gonna look for any reason to try to taint his legacy. But
Yeah.
many people are like, oh, it's a Disney Mickey Mouse ring, it doesn't count, it was in a bubble, like they handed it to the Lakers. Like a lot of people are questioning the validity of the Lakers championship, where no one is questioning the validity of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Nobody's questioning the validity of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Granted, the NFL played like an actual normal season, but then. And nobody's questioning the validity of the Dodgers finally winning the World Series.
Yeah. Even though
We
they
own
should. Go ahead. Go ahead. My bad.
no, like, and I think what you were gonna say is, even though I think if you could call out any sort of question marks, it would be in the
Yeah.
baseball, which I
Especially
would
because Manfred, the way he handled that season last year.
exactly. I would generally agree with you, although I still think it's a legitimate like championship. But I
No,
agree with
I
you. I
mean
think the
they're all
most
legitimate championships.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But we're only really seeing the NBA championship get called into question, which
Right.
first of all, it's stupid, and they're only doing it because it's LeBron. But maybe that's the reason why Adam Silver is so, committed to trying to get everything back to normal as soon as possible, because he's facing those kind of thoughts. We're in the NHL, it doesn't matter how it's being done. You look even at the NHL this year, like there were, I mean, to be fair, there is a little bit of conversation about people saying, oh, the Leafs are only this good because they're only playing Canadian teams, which first of all, if you look at like the advanced statistics behind that, it's bullshit. The Leafs are actually like top 10 in terms of strength of schedule.
Well, I
So they're
mean the Leafs.
earning,
Go ahead.
yeah, so they're earning their wins. So, sorry, what are you going to say about the
So
Leafs?
the Leafs are first on the power play. They're top four in goals against average this year. They literally shut out the. Yes, they had a bad series against the Canucks, but they're exhausted. They've just played 3 games against the Oilers, and they did an absolute incredible job. A lot of people are giving credit. You know what they're doing? It doesn't matter who the Leafs play; they will always find a way to hate on them because it's the Toronto Maple Leafs. They could
Oh,
go
no,
on a 10 game.
100% agree.
They could win the Stanley Cup this year, and people will still bring up the fact that they lost 6-5 to Ottawa. It doesn't matter what happens.
Yeah, well, that's just a funny moment for sure. But my point
Yeah,
is
yeah, I
is
don't want to talk about it.
with what the NHL has done in terms of the whole 24 team bubble last year, and then this year with the playing within their division, like there's more. It's easier to make a case in the NHL of it being different or not counting as much, or like, which we both agree is stupid, but at least there's like reasons that you can point to, where the NBA pretty much played a normal season last. It was a normal playoffs with the
Yeah,
exception of like the 8 versus 9 play in, but I don't think that affected anything. Like even if it wasn't like the Lakers, I can't remember who they played in the first round, but even if it was like one of those other teams in the play-in, like the Lakers would have won that championship. Whereas this year
yeah.
in the NHL, no one's really using that as an excuse to say it's different. Even though like the NHL has operated very differently than it has in previous years.
I mean, I think last year's championship for every team was a lot harder than it normally is. No fans, no family, no support. It's just you in this bubble, isolated from the rest of society for about about a month and a half. So you can even make the argument that it was harder to win these championships last year.
I'd agree with that. I mean,
And
I'm still of the account where if the Raptors and Celtics game 7 was in Toronto in front of fans, they would have won that game.
well, yeah, then you got Drake in there too, hyping up the crowd, and you got the DJ. I 100% agree with you.
And I'm
And
not using that as an excuse. I'm actually using that to blame the Raptors, because they
no,
shouldn't
I
have
agree.
to rely on that home crowd in order to win, right? And the Celtics,
Yeah.
hey, on neutral ground in a bubble, we win the game.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I think the Celtics did really well there to kind of, I don't want to say defy the odds, but they definitely overcame some. They overcame a lot of question marks in that series against the um, defending champs, I believe. Yeah, they were no,
Yep.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, they were. Um, and so I think last year was definitely, and obviously it's not just the fact that there's no fans, but there's this big virus called COVID going around, and you have no idea if you're gonna get it. You can't see it. You can only like trust what the professionals are saying, right? So a lot of professionals don't even know what's going on nowadays. Like they don't even know what to do a lot of the time. So you kind of. I think it's harder. I still stand by my idea that it was harder to win that championship last year than any other year, just because of all the circumstances that was around it.
No, I completely agree. I think that the uncertainty is a huge factor, and that does affect a lot of people. And I think it's, important to sort of recognize that uncertainty that they were having to deal with
Yeah.
on so many accounts. Pivoting here to going from uncertainty to something that is very certain, which is Tom Wilson and dirty hits. You,
Well,
you, you
nice
like that
transition there,
transition?
boss.
Thank you. I
Yeah, that was.
try. I try.
Yeah,
Professional podcaster.
keep working on it, bud. You're doing great.
But yeah, Tom Wilson with a 7-game suspension for his hit on, I believe it was Brendan Carlo
Carlo,
of
yep.
the Boston Bruins. There's a lot of, it depends on who you talk to. There's a whole lot of conversation around this decision. Some people, particularly Washington Capitals fans, but not exclusively Washington Capitals fans. I do want to say there are a lot of neutral fans who thought that the hit was clean or was not this bad. And then there are a lot of people who, granted, are Tom Wilson haters who are saying that it wasn't enough. And there are even people suggesting that he should be thrown out of the league permanently. What's
Wow.
your thought on, 1, the hit, 2, the suspension,
All
and
right.
3, players like Tom Wilson in the NHL?
Okay, so I watched the hit a few times. And he wasn't suspended for a legal hit to the head. He was suspended for an illegal boarding check. If he doesn't make contact with the head, I will argue that that's a clean hit because he went shoulder in, and if he doesn't make contact with Carlo's head, then I can see it just being a clean hit, and it should happen sometimes when you get hit like that. I don't like Tom Wilson. You know this. But 7 games is a lot. Like, I understand he's kind of like a repeat offender in the sense that he's also been suspended multiple times. This is his first illegal boarding suspension. Um, and it's been over 100 days since his last suspension, and by rule, he's no longer a repeat offender technically. Um, I just I wish that the league was more consistent in the sense of I wish they were able to, you know, they weren't. I feel like the big reason they suspended him 7 games was because it's who it is. It's Tom Wilson. If I don't know, say Alex Ovechkin or Evgeny Kuznetsov makes that hits, it's probably 2 or 3. Um, I probably would have gone 2 or 3. And I probably would have maybe given him a max fine. I think it's like 5,000 or something. That's what I would have done. Players like him, like to answer your second question, players like him obviously aren't very common in the league. There's a few others. Brad Marchand is one of them. Nazem Kadri, you can make the argument that he's also one of them. But it goes to show that I think this league has kind of moved on, and I think that's why they suspended him so high is because they want people to realize that this isn't accepted anymore. Um, do I think he'll do something like this again? Probably, but I think he's a little bit smarter in the fact that he won't do something like head contact wise. Um, as a player, he's got skill. He really does. I look at him like a Nazem Kadri when he was on the Leafs. You know, I just think at the end of the day, obviously you can't be making hits like this. It's not smart. It's not smart. But wasn't in the numbers. If he makes no contact with the head, I don't think it's a suspension, and I think it's a clean hit. Your thoughts?
Yeah, with respect to the hit itself,
Yeah.
I don't think it's that bad of a hit per se. But it's the behavior surrounding the hit that concerns me. Because when I watch the hit, he sees the player
Mm-hmm.
and seeks him out, and he's
Yeah.
committed to the hit like seconds before he even gets there. He's like, I'm gonna hit this guy no matter what. And
Right.
even though he was intending to go shoulder, he didn't.
And I 100% agree there. I just think that, yeah, that's another argument I make is he came in like a freight train. Like he had he had a running start.
Absolutely. And here's some stuff about Tom Wilson. So, since Tom Wilson's entered the league,
Uh huh.
he's committed 333 regular season penalties.
That's a lot.
Which, once again, I don't have a problem with that because like those could be tripping or hooking or whatever.
Yeah,
The
those
thing
could
that
be like normal penalties.
exactly the thing that concerns me with that is 72 of them have been majors,
Whoa.
16 misconducts, 2 match penalties. The only players who have more penalty minutes than him in this span: Antoine Roussel, Cody McLeod, Evander Kane. Those are typically fighters. So they're
Vander Kane.
accruing 5 minutes at a time for fighting, which is legal, not 10 minutes at a time for misconduct penalties. He's
Right.
been suspended 5 times, fined 2 times beyond that, and those are just regular season statistics. And of course, as a Penguins fan, the one incident that's going to retain in my head is when he broke Zach Aston Reese's jaw with a headshot in the playoffs a couple of years ago, and then scored the winning goal in
Yeah, I
that
remember
game.
that. Was that 2 years ago?
That was 2018, the year they won the cup.
Oh, okay.
And I'm, once again, I believe it was 2018. I'm going to just make sure I'm correct about that. Yeah,
But
2018,
but
game
I remember.
3.
Yeah, I remember that hit.
And I, once again, like, not to bring it to the Pittsburgh Penguins, but it's my belief where if Tom Wilson's thrown out of the game for that hit and like properly suspended, I think the Penguins win that playoff series. And then, I mean, the Capitals went on to win the cup, so there's no reason why the Penguins couldn't have done the same thing.
Correct.
Although we're here talking about Tom Wilson. I'm not trying to undermine the 2018 Washington Capitals. They're deserving of that Stanley Cup. Ovi deserves a cup. I'm not in any way trying to insinuate that they don't deserve that Stanley Cup. That rule that you stated, saying that he's no longer considered a repeat offender
after
because
100
it's been
days.
2 years, is the stupidest rule I've ever heard of in my life.
Yep.
So just because this guy goes 2 years without being suspended, we're supposed to ignore the 5 suspensions he's gotten before then?
Well, I think what the league wants to do is that they want to see if he's changed. Giving him enough time to kind of rethink his life decisions up to this point.
Once you've been suspended 3 times in your career, you do not deserve to remove your repeat offender status.
No, and I think it's a stupid rule as well because, like, what if guys like who do hits like that don't do hits like that very often get that, and they do it twice, I don't know, in the span of 2 years, and all of a sudden they're a repeat offender when guys like Tom Wilson's literally go out for blood.
Exactly. I think in Wilson's career has been just one controversial hit after another, after another, after another. And honestly, I think it's starting to get to the point where he's proven that he has not learned from his behavior.
That's why they're giving him 7.
And if we look at every single one of these hits, the one thing that I see in terms of a pattern is he recognizes that a player is in a position where he can be hit, and once he's made that decision in his mind that he's going to hit the player, he follows through with that, regardless of what the play is after the fact. If the puck is gone, if the player turns his back, once Tom Wilson decides that he's going to hit the player, he's committed to the decision. And even in situations where it turns into what would be a dirty hit, and then any other player would give up on that hit and move away, he commits to the hit. And he's shown that time and time and time again, to the point where I'm not going to say anything and say like we need to throw him out of the league right now, but
Right.
I think this 7-game suspension is less of this specific hit, and it's more of the things that led to you committing this hit has led to you committing equally dirty hits, more dirty hits in the past. And so we need to show you that you can't lock onto a guy from 10 feet away and then commit to it.
So it's like a point to the rest of the league to saying, we know this guy's an idiot. We know this guy's done stuff like this before. We're not afraid to, send him out for a whole 7 games. That's what
Exactly.
you're saying, right?
Yeah, and I think it's to the point where, obviously, I think his worst hit was the one on Oscar Sundqvist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where he got the 20 games that was then brought down to 14. I think if he ever commits a hit that's similar to that, his next suspension is going to be an entire season.
Well, do you think like a Rafi Torres?
Exactly.
So for people who don't know what happened to Rafi Torres, basically what happened was he was suspended for a bunch of time. Was it the game he came back from his suspension?
Yeah, so I believe he got suspended for a long period of time, and then the game back then had an equally dirty hit, and then they just threw the book at him.
Yeah, they gave him 41 games, which was half the season. And then he just never came back. No one wanted him back.
Well, and I think that's the
So
thing that we say when we talk about Tom Wilson. The thing is, Tom Wilson's a good hockey player. I
yeah,
understand why the
Raffi Torres
Washington
was too.
Capitals want him in their lineup. Like, when he's playing well, he can put up 60, 70 points in a season. He can be on their top line. So, once again, this isn't going to be a Raffi Torres in the sense of Raffi Torres was a fourth line guy who picked up maybe 3 points in a season. So
Right.
when the team realized that he was at risk of getting suspended for half a season, he took up a roster spot that was more valuable going to somewhere else. If Tom Wilson gets even a 7-game suspension every single season, from the Washington Capitals' perspective, having Tom Wilson in the lineup for 70 games because he misses the rest of the season due to suspension, it's more valuable than saying, hey, we need to move on from this guy. The only way Tom Wilson's going to get thrown out of the league or actually face severe consequences is if the NHL says, you're done.
Yeah. Because these suspensions are just like slap on the hands. That's all they are. Like, and I wish the league, I don't want to say I wish the league did more, but I wish the league did more in this sense. I wish they were consistent. You get guys who do hits that are worse than this, because the hit itself wasn't terrible, right? Like, you and I can both agree it wasn't the worst hit you've seen.
No, it definitely wasn't. I mean, I
I
still
just,
think it's worthy of the penalty he got and then the suspension. He maybe not 7 games, but once
maybe,
again, this goes back to the whole repeat offender reputation. I think that if any other player in the NHL throws that hit, he gets 2 minutes for boarding, he gets a hearing, and then he maybe gets a game. But
unless
because
you're like
it's
a Vander Kane or like uh Brad Marchand.
Yeah, I think if it's a Vander Kane throwing this hit, he might get 3. Because
Yeah.
it's Tom Wilson, he gets 7, and I think that's deserved because you talk about, oh, you shouldn't use a player's reputation. Well, when it comes to something like illegal hits and suspensions, player reputation, player history does matter. You do take things into account. If it's a player's first bad hit, he crosses the line for the first time, maybe it's unintentional, maybe like
Right.
for whatever reason it happened once, you give the guy the benefit of the doubt. When it's the 6th time he's doing this, getting suspended, when it's how many countless hits has he gone that's been questioned, we're in the double digits in terms of like illegal hits that he's looked at in his career. At
Yep.
one point you say, you know what, no, if you do a hit that's worth 1 game for anyone else, it's 10 for you because this is the 10th time you've done that. And you've shown that it's not, at this point, if Tom Wilson hits a guy in an illegal manner, I don't think it's a fluke. I think it's intentional.
Well, yeah, and you can argue that because you've seen it time and time again, like where he's literally had running starts from like 10 feet away, and he's hit somebody. But
Exactly. I saw it. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I stick to the point though that if he doesn't make contact with the head, maybe he gets a game, but he gets a hearing, but I don't think he gets a game. I think you can argue that's a clean hit. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I definitely agree with you on that. But I was going to say, even a couple of days ago when the Penguins were playing the Capitals, there was an instant in the game where the Penguins player has the puck in the middle of the ice, and you can see Tom Wilson sees him from the other side of the ice. The
Yeah.
Penguins player dumps the puck into the zone. You count 1, 2, 3 seconds that he's dumped the puck into the zone. So at this point, he's not finishing the check. Like, because finishing the check is within a second or two, right?
Correct.
He dumps the puck in, and you see him continue. Hits him clean, shoulder to shoulder. But it's the fact that the puck has been dumped already for 3 seconds.
Yeah,
What
like
happened?
other
He saw who he wanted to hit, and he followed through. And nothing about the situation, even though the situation changed, nothing about that like went into his brain and said he's no longer eligible to be hit. And even though it was a clean hit, it's that pattern of behavior where I don't care if he hits a guy shoulder to shoulder. If he's hitting a guy who's not eligible to be hit, that's a dirty hit. And I see
no,
time and time again, I don't think he understands at this point. I don't think, I know he understands the rules. I don't think he cares about the rules. He believes that he can go out and hit anybody he wants, whenever he wants, however he wants. And the NHL, clearly 20 games, clearly 10 games, clearly however many games he's been suspended in his career, hasn't sunk into him and he hasn't realized that he can't. And so if he continues to do this, next time Tom Wilson commits a dirty hit, I want the NHL to throw him out for the entire season, give him an 82-game suspension.
I think the whole reason why he does it is because he knows no one else will come after him like that. Like there's not very many players like that in the league. And Nazem Kadri isn't in the same division. You got Brad Marchand, who's probably coming after him next game. Just an FYI. You got players on the Penguins who have had this guy mess with them for years. So I just think there's just not enough players in the league right now that are the same caliber as he is with the same mentality, because I think they understand that you'd rather be, you know, pull up on a hit, because I think he knows the rule. He knows he'll get suspended. I agree. I don't think he gives a shit. I think he what like you said, he picks a player, he goes for the hit, and he's gonna hit. And not a lot of players have that mentality anymore, because a lot of players are focused on, speed and skill and puck handling, and they're not so focused on hitting anymore.
Well, and they shouldn't have that mentality, because the whole point of body checking in the NHL, and here's the thing where like people who truly understand the game of hockey, body checking in the NHL isn't to injure players. It's not to, pump up your team. It's like part of the game. Body positioning is important. The whole point of hockey being a contact sport is you're able to use your body in order to dispossess people of the puck.
Correct.
Right? That's the whole purpose of body checking. So if you hit a guy who doesn't have the puck, that's not why you check people, right? The whole point is to separate someone from the puck so that your team can get the puck and score, right?
Right.
So the whole point of hitting for the sake of hitting, that's not a part of the game. And so the reason why people don't think that way is because that's not how hockey's supposed to be played. And then also to your point about there aren't a lot of players like this, I think the NHL has made decisions with the rule book, decisions with how they police the game. They want to get away from the old school goon squad type of thing where players dealt with stuff themselves. Because if Tom Wilson was playing in the 90s, every time he touched an opponent's player, you had guys like Scott Stevens, you had Brad May, you had Ty
Right.
Domi, you
Yeah.
had George Larocque, you had like Paul Bisson, you had like every team had one or two goons. Tom Wilson would have been fighting every single night in the 90s, early 2000s in the NHL. Just because you had a list of goons whose sole purpose would be, there's Tom Wilson, go knock his head off.
Yeah. Go
And
go
the
show him what we do to him.
Exactly. And the NHL has decided that that's not how hockey's supposed to be played. And I agree with them on that. And now goons don't exist anymore because the fourth line role, you need to be a speed and skill guy still. Sure, you need to have some grit to you, but, you can no longer have a spot on an NHL roster just by being good at fighting.
Well, you'll
But
never see you'll never see someone like Spezza do shit like he does, because Spezza understands what the game has gone to.
Exactly. Like guys like Ryan Reeves still exist in the league, but Ryan Reeves exists in the league because he's good enough to still score. He's good enough. He hits. He forechecks effectively. Guys like Patrick Hornquist. Sure, he's a tough guy to play against. He can fight if he needs to, but his role is he's a forechecker, tough, gritty guy. He's
Yeah.
good enough without the fighting in his arsenal. But because of that, the NHL now has to officiate their game more effectively, because in the past the players would avenge, they would come up with the justice themselves, and they would come up with it by a guy like Tom Wilson would have to fight every night, and eventually it gets to the point where either he's tired of fighting every night or that takes a toll on him. But that doesn't
Yeah.
exist anymore. So it's up to the league now to, determine punishment. And I think that's the way it should be, right? Like, if you commit an illegal act in the game of hockey, your punishment should be handed to you from the league. It shouldn't be handed to you by the goon of the next opponent's, like on the next opponent's team. And so the
Right.
NHL needs to realize that, and the NHL should be handing out more suspensions and more lengthy suspensions to get rid of this kind of behavior.
I agree, especially with the idea of repeat offenders. They should be giving them longer and more punishing sentences.
Exactly, because, I don't think we see too many illegal hits in the NHL. And, if you want to talk about, like, if I was to tell you, name a dirty player in the NHL, right? A lot of the time, the type of player you would name is, sure, a player who's been suspended once or twice in their career, but I think they're called a dirty player because of like small stuff they do here and there. Like they'll get away with a cross check here and a slash there, right? And sure, that's dirty
Yeah,
play,
yeah,
but
yeah.
that's not going to jeopardize someone's career. That's not going to intentionally injure someone long term. It's not going to put someone in the hospital, right? Where if you talk about dirty players like, okay, Kachuk or Marchand or, like even like old school prime Flyers Wayne Simmons, right? Those were frustrating people to play against, but they were never like going out almost every game just like heat-seeking missile, like putting people in the hospital through headshots. The only player I can think about in the NHL today who still does that is Tom Wilson.
Yep. And the fact that I agree, the fact that he hasn't learned from anything he's done so far is kind of concerning. Like you said, he's a good hockey player. He could put up 70 points in the season if he really wanted to and if he behaved himself. It's just the problem is he doesn't like to behave himself because he's got a mindset. You're right. He's got a mindset where he looks at someone, he says, "I'm going to hit him. I don't care if the puck's 4 minutes away from him. I'm going to hit him." And unfortunately, that's just frowned upon in the league. And is there anything the league can do? Well, no, except yes, you can make a harder suspension. I don't think the suspensions are working. I don't. I don't think any fines are working. I don't think any of these are working. And I think they really need to look back and be like, okay, what can we really do to get this guy out? And like you said, he could be cut for a whole season. He comes back and he could be banned from the NHL for life. Like that one guy who did all that doping. I don't know what his name is, but he was banned from the NHL for life. You could do a lifetime ban.
No,
Um,
I 100% agree with you on that. And it's like the same thing in the NFL where like the NFL was more tough on people who broke the doping policy than they were of people who were like intentionally injuring players. And it reminds
yeah,
me of
well, like
Vontez Burfict in the NFL, right? One dirty hit
okay,
gets suspended. Two dirty hits get suspended longer. Three dirty hits get suspended even longer. By the fourth time, thrown out of the league for an entire year, for 2 years. And then, when you throw a guy out for an entire season, then it really starts to impact the team. And like I said, the Washington Capitals aren't going to drop one of their top players if he's only missing 10 games. If he misses an entire season, then they're going to have to really start considering if he's going to be the type of player they want to keep. And I think only then will the Capitals really consider, okay, do we want this guy? He's going to be filling up a roster spot for the entire year and we won't be able to use him.
yeah. I mean, I don't think the Capitals will ever get rid of him because I think they like him. I really do. The organization. Ovechkin came out and he said today that he thinks the suspension is shit. He thinks that it was too many games for a hit that was too uncontroversial. Your thoughts on what Ovechkin has a play to do in Tom Wilson and how he kind of went about thinking how it was shit.
Well, they're going to defend their guy. The one thing I will say about Ovechkin is at least that take is like rooted in like accuracy. Like I think that if your stance is it was a hit with a lot of controversy around it in terms of some people thought it was okay, some people thought it was bad, and if your overall conclusion is I think based on the hit itself it was too many games, I'll agree with you on that. Like I said, I think this hit in isolation isn't an extremely suspendable hit. It's maybe 1 game max. The reason I'm happy with the suspension is because it's the person who's committing the act, right? So I'm actually not too mad about Ovi's comments, and obviously you're going to defend your teammate.
Yeah.
I'm mad at Laviolette's comments, the coach, because he said, "Oh, it's a hockey hit." No, it's not. Those are the types of hits that you want out of the game of hockey. And if you have coaches in the sport saying stuff like, that's a hockey hit, that like you can't say things like that. And then
So
the other
so
thing, sorry, go
no,
ahead.
go ahead. I'll just tell you what his whole statement was after.
Yeah, and so then the other thing I'm going to say is just because to your point that you said a couple of minutes ago, the maximum allowable fine under the CBA is $5,000. And talk about, the fines aren't working. Well, like Alexander Ovechkin got fined $5,000 for spearing that guy in the crotch, right?
Yeah, that was brutal.
Alexander Ovechkin makes what, $10 million a year in base salary, add another $15 million a year in endorsements. Do you think
Yeah,
he's going to
something like
care when he's making $20+ million a year that he gets suspended for $5,000? No.
No.
That's like if I got suspended $5. It's like,
Right.
cool. I get to spear a guy and all it's going to cost me is like a cup of coffee. I'll spear a guy if I don't like him, because that's not
Yeah.
a punishment that is going to deter that behavior. The maximum allowable fine needs to be way more than $5,000 to actually make an impact. Like, a fine at
I
this point is a joke. It's like coaches, when they like coaches, if they really want to speak out against officiating, it's going to cost them 10 grand. For them, that's not enough. You still see coaches call bullshit referee calls like all the time, because they realize that $10,000 isn't a significant price to pay to sound
Are you
off on the
thinking of the same
referees.
coach as I am? You thinking of the same
I'm,
coach
I'm
I am?
I'm thinking of a lot of coaches in that particular
I got one in
instance.
mind that's definitely done this multiple times.
Tortorella.
Yep. Okay, let me
Anyways, you
just
can
read
read
to you what
Laviolette's.
Ovechkin's.
Yeah. Okay, read Ovechkin and then Laviolette's statement too if you have it before we wrap up here on the Tom Wilson talk.
I don't have Laviolette's, but I'd like you to comment on what Ovechkin says here. So he says, I think it's kind of a joke because we were talking to the referees after the first period, and he said, I don't think it's even a 2 minutes. It was a hard hit. Yeah, the player got hurt. It sucks. But when you play hockey, you have to be ready for that.
Yeah,
What are your
I
thoughts on
mean,
that?
I think that there's a little bit of truth to that. Like, obviously, you have to be ready for everything in hockey, and that's true. And then, I mean, if the referee said what he said, then obviously that's a true statement. I think that that referee's an idiot, really, if he looked at that hit and said it's not even 2 minutes. I don't know how you
Hmm.
can look at that hit and not call a penalty on it. Um,
Yeah, are you surprised? I
but
was
I
gonna
think
ask, are you surprised that was not a penalty? Not even like a 2 minute boarding?
no, because like the referees miss so many calls that should be penalties. And so like I don't think I'm that like surprised. Like even in the Leafs game last night, and I'm mentioning it because I know you saw it, like that Kerfoot hit that wasn't called a penalty. Like that's not a
Yeah, no,
suspendable, like that's not suspendable at all. That but like that's a textbook 2 minutes for boarding. And you saw that
yeah.
when he makes the hit, he pauses, he touches the puck and stops because he assumes that there's a penalty. Like he knows that the hit that he made was a penalty. Like even the player who committed the hit knows it because he touches the puck and then pauses. And then the referee doesn't blow his whistle. And after like a second of pausing, he passes the puck over and realizes that it wasn't called a penalty. So you know that even when the player committing the hit knows it's a penalty and the ref doesn't call it, that there's a problem with officiating.
No, I 100% agree. I watched that hit. I'm like, oh my God, Kerfoot, why are you taking us a stupid penalty? And he's standing there, and there's no ref's arm up, and I'm like, no penalty, okay, but I agree. I think there should have been at least a 2 minute penalty on A, that Kerfoot hit, and B, that Wilson hit.
No, absolutely. And then the thing is, obviously there's different levels of punishment for different types of hits. But here's the thing is like if those 2 minute Kerfoot hits aren't called consistently, then there's going to be more of them, right? And I'm not blaming Kerfoot. Like, I don't think Kerfoot's a dirty player. Every once in a while, you're going to hit a guy, and for whatever situation, it ends up being a bad hit, right? But the whole point is the referee needs to call those, even if they're accidental, even if they're unintentional, even if it's like a split-second thing. You need to call the
Yeah.
2 minute penalty, because if those don't get called, then you have players who are going to do them more often, and the more often those hits happen, the more chances there are that hits like this Tom Wilson hit happen. Hits like Tom Wilson on Sundqvist, hits like Tom Wilson on Zach Aston Reese, hits like I'm trying to think of other players who have committed dirty hits, but we're just on a roll here with Tom Wilson. That those are the only ones coming to mind.
Nazem
But
Kadri, Brad Marchand, all these
yeah,
guys.
yes, exactly. Like all those types of hits only happen because they're not being penalized consistently or penalized enough.
Correct. Well, I think if you look at Nazem Kadri after his suspension against Boston back-to-back years, yeah, you haven't really heard much of an issue of him in elsewhere in the league, and I think a lot of that has to do with the role he has to play. When he was on Toronto, he was a third line grit guy. He was forced out there by Babcock. He said, "Go hit somebody." In Colorado, he's a second line center who's scoring 30 goals a season. So it really goes to show I think it has to go a lot to a difference of coaching and mentalities. Mike Babcock obviously was not the greatest coach here in Toronto, common sense wise. He was a great coach, as in we won a bunch of games and made it to the playoffs every year with him. Um, but I agree. I think the mentality of people definitely really need to change from this mentality of I'm going to go and hit this guy and finish my check to, oh, the puck's not even close to him. Maybe I should go follow the puck.
No, I think that's absolutely true. I think that's like the perfect last word to talk about. Obviously, it's up to the league and the referees and the officials to call penalties, call suspensions, but also, you can't have the captain of your team and the coach of your team enabling that kind of behavior. And I know
Yeah,
that you're going to defend your guy, but you know what? Even if you're the coach of the team, you have to at some point say, look, that's the type of hit that we shouldn't be doing. Or as a coach of my team, I don't tell my players to go out and do that, because that looks bad on a coach. And like you said, Babcock did play a little bit like that. Like, I feel like once again, I can't say I know the guy personally, but like based on the persona he's put forward, I think with Babcock is if you cross the line, Babcock will forgive you because he doesn't care. And I feel like Laviolette's the same way. Laviolette's been enabling Tom Wilson's behavior, and then Barry Trotz before him, and Todd Reardon, like all those coaches have enabled his behavior because the coaches haven't said, if you do that, I'm benching you because I can't have you taking stupid penalties.
it's not even stupid penalties. It's just, what if you're the coach of the other team? Like, say you're Bruce Cassidy, and you're like, holy shit, this guy's an idiot. You should at least have the common sense and decency to be like, yeah, don't do hits like that on other guys, because if I'm the coach of the other team, that guy looks like, I lose a very important man. Like, what if that happened to Tom Wilson? Laviolette would be losing his fucking mind right now.
Oh, 100%. And
But
yeah, I think that's a good place to finish
yeah,
it. And yeah, getting to what we wanted this podcast to be about 45 minutes in, but sometimes that's what happens.
yeah, we
But
get a little carried away here on this podcast. We're just a bunch of amateurs. Come on, guys.
no, but it's good. It's good to sort of hash out the issues and really talk about them rather than just, like Sports Center talk about it for 2.5 minutes and then move on. But yeah, we have a couple of hot takes that we want to talk about. And so, Jacob, how about you give me your first one and just, explain your reasoning why for like a minute or two, and then I'll let you know what I think about it. And for
So
those of you listening, we've not told the other person what they are, so we're
yeah,
completely in the dark.
yeah, I have no idea what Labi's gonna say. He has no idea what I'm gonna say. Good job sticking to the script, Labi. You're doing great. Um, um,
Shh.
so before I go anything, Jeff Skinner scored his first goal of the season today against the Islanders. And
That's
here's
fucking
my hot
huge. Let's go. One
here
goal, $9 million a year.
here is my hot take. Jeff Skinner is worth the money. He just plays on Buffalo.
Oh, I don't know about that.
That's why it's a hot take. Welcome to the podcast. Here's my reasoning. The reason why I think his skate work is some of the best I've seen in the NHL. He has a very good wrist shot. If you look back to that season that he was here in Buffalo, no one had expectations. No one expected anything of Buffalo, so he could have screwed around. No one would have cared. Now, if you take Jeff Skinner, and you put him to a team, maybe a team like, well, you could put him to the Islanders. That's where all the first rounders seem to go. You could put him to the Rangers. You could put him to even like a team like Arizona. And I think he does significantly better because I don't think the pressure is on him. And he's not on Buffalo. Buffalo, there's no goaltending. There's no defense. There's Eichel, Hall, and Skinner, and that's just about it. Go to a team with a competent second or third line and make his role different. Put him on the third line and say, listen, we know you can score 40 goals when you play to your max. We know you haven't scored 40 goals because you haven't been playing to your max. Go on the third line, get us like 15 to 20 goals in a season, and your job will be done. I think what people have the expectation of Skinner is he's a first liner on a team. He's a first liner when really, in reality, he's maybe a second line, even at the third at best. And I think the people as in Buffalo Sabre fans, God bless them, they've had to deal with this team for about a decade now being absolute dog shit. I think fans need to understand that he is worth the money. Don't get me wrong. He is a very good player. He's playing for Buffalo. And Buffalo is a place where players' careers go to die. So there's one of my hot takes. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
I agree with everything you said with the reasoning.
Okay?
But that does not, I feel like that doesn't justify the hot take. Because I agree with you that Skinner should be a second or third liner, and that if he goes to another team where he can play a second or third line role consistently, he can maybe get 20, 25 goals a year. I completely agree with everything you just said there. However, that does not make him worth $9 million a year. A player who makes $9 million a year in the NHL in 2021 needs to be minimum point per game. If you're a goal scorer, minimum 40 goals a year every single year. And
Well, that's why it's a hot take, different opinions.
no, for sure. And so I don't think that Jeff Skinner can ever score 40 goals again. I don't think he can. Now, to your point, if I was a GM, right? Buffalo's very desperate at this point to make moves. If a team was willing to retain half of his salary and I had Jeff Skinner at $4.5 million, I'd consider trading for him. I will agree with you on there. I think that Jeff Skinner in the right role can be a 20-25 goal scorer, can be a solid depth forward, and at $4.5 million a year, if he's scoring 20-25 goals a year, I think he's worth that valuation.
Quick little thing is Buffalo has said they are open to any trade, so it could happen.
Absolutely. I heard a rumor the other day saying that Buffalo is interested in John Gibson, and I'm like, really? He's going to go from Anaheim to Buffalo? No fucking way.
Give him a chance to freaking win, dude. What's your first hot take?
Yeah, okay. So I think the general consensus is I'll disagree with you on face value that he'll never be worth $9 million, but if you got Buffalo to retain half his salary, I can see how he could be worth $4.5 million on a second or third line.
Okay, sounds good. Agree to disagree.
All right, my first hot take is that the Selke Trophy winner this season is going to be Joel Eriksson Ek of the Minnesota Wild.
Explain.
For whatever reason, actually I know the reason, it's because I perpetually have been hating on them for many years. A guy I follow on Twitter, Dom Lucian, who's hilarious and a very good journalist, he's like fallen in love with the Minnesota Wild, and so I've watched a decent amount of Minnesota Wild hockey this year. Also, they have Kirill Kaprizov, and I recommend just watching his highlights. Unbelievable player.
Still won't get rookie. It'll be Lehkonen.
Yeah, it might be.
Sorry,
there's a hot take that maybe that's your second hot take.
That wasn't my second, but that's my third now.
There you go. So as a Penguins fan, right? I've watched Sidney Crosby play hockey his entire career. And one of the things that he gets credit for, but not enough because he's never won the Selke, is just how superior of a defensive player Sidney Crosby is. Always in the right positioning, always supporting defensively, always making smart plays in his defensive zone. When I watch Joel Eriksson Ek play, he reminds me, at least on the defensive end, of that type of player. I see him, and his responsibility in his defensive zone is unbelievable. He's always in the right position. He's always helping out defensively. He's able to support the defense effectively. And also this season, Joel Eriksson Ek has really emerged as a complete two-way player. He has really improved all over, and in terms of his productivity as a scorer. And when you partner that with the responsibility I've seen him on the defensive end, if you look at some of his advanced analytics, he's absolutely dominant in terms of on ice performance. And for that reason, I think that he really is emerging as a favorite for the Selke Trophy this year.
I'll agree with you in the sense of you've shit on Minnesota for so long, because I have too. Here's where I disagree with you is this is going to sound very biased, but I'm going to say a very unbiased thing about it. I think Mitch Marner will win it. Now, the reason why I say Mitch Marner, he plays on the penalty kill. He plays 200 feet. He will skate all the way back after losing the puck in the offensive zone. He'll stand in front of the puck, take a hit by Shea Weber any day of the game to make sure it doesn't get to the zone. He's much better in the defense. Well, obviously, he's not much better in the defensive zone because he's fourth in the league with goals and points. But he's very good in the defensive zone. He reminds me a lot of Crosby. I watch him and I see Crosby in him. Obviously, not the Crosby that should have won it probably for the past decade at least 5 times. But I see Crosby-like attributes. He's a team player. He'll stand in front of the puck on the penalty kill. He'll go shorthanded and he'll score 30 goals a season. I agree in the sense that Joel Eriksson Ek. I've watched some of the Minnesota play just because there's been nothing else on, and Minnesota was the only game on. He is very good in the defensive zone, and I'm very impressed with the way he's been able to develop as a player. In his 200-foot game, I just don't think it'll be enough to win some of the other players who have been playing this season.
Okay, yeah, no, I can definitely see that. Now, let me maybe quantify my statement.
Sure.
I don't think he will win the Selkie
Okay.
because he won't get voted by like the people who are in charge of it.
Yeah.
But I think that if you were an unbiased individual, I would say that he's deserving of winning it. I don't think that he's going to.
Okay.
I don't think that he's going to actually get voted as the Selkie Trophy winner, but I believe that if you were to make an unbiased decision, it would be him.
Fair. And I guess I can agree with you on that one.
And once again, I do have to say that this is not fully my own like independent take. There's an article by Dom Lucian on the Athletics basically explaining why he thinks Joel Eriksson Ek should be in the conversation, and I have to say, like, I'm on board with it because he makes a very convincing argument, and I think that when you look at his statistics and when you look at how effective the Minnesota Wild have been this season, where I thought they would be absolutely useless and they're actually in a playoff spot, I'm hopping on his bandwagon. And it's at the point where it's early enough where I don't think anyone else is talking about it, where I still consider it a hot take.
Fair enough. Fair enough. My second hot take of the day. The Kansas City Chiefs will not win another Super Bowl for the next 3 years. It's a hot take.
You see, the thing is, I can get on board with this. Let's hear your reasoning.
Buffalo is showing an extreme amount of promise with Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, both of the Singletary and Moss both having incredible running games. They could have beat the Chiefs last season. The Chiefs have no offensive line, as you saw during that Super Bowl. You have other teams that are coming out of the AFC. Cleveland's on the up. You got other teams, like even the Dolphins are on the up. So I think there are other teams who can challenge the Chiefs. Now, not only do the Chiefs have to face teams like that who are coming up, Patrick Mahomes will not be 100%. He had to have a surgery. And once someone has a surgery, not to say that they won't recover, but they will never be the same form as they were before that surgery. Like, it doesn't matter how many times you get a surgery, you will never be the same person. Do I think he'll be still throwing incredibly stupid throws that shouldn't be caught? Sure. Will they work all the time? No. And that's the problem, is they will not work the same way they used to. Now, not only that, but then you have to go against in the Super Bowl. Probably the Bucs will go back to back. That's what I think is going to happen. Is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers will win the Super Bowl for the next year as well. There's my hot take for next year. There's my prediction. And then there's a lot of other teams in the NFC who are just coming up and are going to challenge the Chiefs. And we saw that the Chiefs can be exploited. And all it takes is just a little bit of grit, a little bit of oil, a little bit of blood, and the Chiefs fall apart. So,
yeah,
that's what I think.
I'm going to agree with you on this.
Wow.
And I honestly don't. I guess on the surface it sounds like a hot take. I think like you said, when you sort of explain your reasoning, I don't think it's that hot of a take. I'm going to agree with you on that. And
wow. Okay.
And here's why. Well, we saw the Kansas City Chiefs this year. They had 2 offensive line injuries, and that was enough to stop them from winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
What happens if Mahomes,
gets
obviously knock
again?
wood? What happens if Mahomes gets an injury? What happens if Kelsey gets an injury? What happens if, Tyreek Hill gets injured? What happens if Tyrann Mathieu on the defensive end gets injured? People, I think that the Brady and the Patriots, and then Brady this year with the Bucs, but the Patriots in particular have really, made, like, it's really confused us in the sense of it made us assume that it's very easy to win championships and get to Super Bowls as long as you have a good team. That's
Right.
not the case. Like, Brett Favre won Super Bowl. Drew Brees won Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers won Super Bowl.
I think Ben has one or two.
Ben has 2 Super Bowls. Eli Manning, 2 Super Bowls. Now, granted, Eli Manning is definitely not on. Like, let me clarify myself as a Giants fan. Patrick Mahomes already has like probably a
Wait,
better career than Eli Manning has.
wait, hold on. Are you sure Eli Manning has two?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. He's the only person. Well, him and Nick Foles are the only 2 quarterbacks who have beaten Tom Brady in a Super Bowl.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Uh, yeah, Brady's 7-3. 2 of those losses are to Eli, and then one of them is to Nick
Nick
Foles.
Foles.
Big Dick Nick. But yeah, I'm gonna agree with you just because it's insanely difficult to make a Super Bowl, let alone win a Super Bowl, even if you have the best quarterback, even if you have the best tight end, even if you have elite players everywhere. You know,
Yeah,
and in the NFL, it's not a best of 7 series; it's a one-off game.
yeah,
Minneapolis Miracle,
yeah.
shanked a 25-yard field goal. How many times have we seen like one play end a team's season? And so for you to say next 3 years, I think it's entirely possible that they don't win a Super Bowl in the next 3 years because it's insanely hard to win a Super Bowl. Now, if you were to say they'll never win another Super Bowl again, in the Mahomes
That
era, I think that becomes a little bit harder to defend. I
I
don't
don't think
think
that's a
that,
hot take. I think that's a hot mess.
yeah, I think that would be like a scolding hot take. And so, and because you said win and not make a Super Bowl, I'm gonna agree with you on this. I think that it is entirely possible that the Kansas City Chiefs won't win one of the next 3 Super Bowls.
And just like you were saying, they may have the best quarterback, best offensive talent in the league. Look at the Edmonton Oilers. Best player, best talent. You can argue that first line, but they have no defense and no goaltending, and that's a huge issue, and they'll never win a cup that way.
Exactly. You don't win on paper because that's why they play the games.
Yeah, and you saw Brady didn't care if Mahomes is like half his age. Brady didn't care if everyone thought the Chiefs were going to win. Brady didn't give a shit if people still weren't putting him in the GOAT conversation after his sixth Super Bowl win, in his seventh, looking for his seventh. So you can be the best team on paper, but if you don't show up to play in those one-off games, you're screwed.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm still picking the Chiefs as like like I think the Chiefs are still the number one
No,
favorite, but I
uh,
completely agree with you. That doesn't
I
necessarily guarantee anything, and there's
well,
definitely no guarantee that they'll win.
we'll talk more about the predictions when the season gets a little closer.
Absolutely. I
Your
mean,
second,
I'm still got to get through to the free agency and the draft. But yeah, my second hot take, I'll stick in hockey, and then for my third one, I'll go outwards.
yeah, sure, that's cool, man.
I would never pay a starting goalie in the NHL more than $5 million a year.
Where's the hot take there? Because you look at the goalies that are making above five, Carey Price, Bobrovsky, all these guys are playing like shit because their expectations are through the roof.
I mean, okay. I mean,
But hold on,
I
hold on.
guess maybe that
You,
isn't a hot take,
are
but
you saying you would never pay a goalie more than like a starting goalie more than five?
if I'm the general manager of an NHL team, I don't care if I have the next Martin Brodeur. I am not paying a goalie more than $5 million a year in the NHL.
Here, okay, that's where I'm going to disagree with you. If you have the next Martin Brodeur, and he knows that, and everyone knows that, like you're not going to sign him. Here's where I think I don't mind the $10 million. I don't like the fact that it's over to 10 years. That's the biggest problem I have with these contracts. Bobrovsky is 8 years, 10 million. Carey Price is 10 years or 10 million. If you pay a goalie 10 million for 5 years, I'm okay with that because 5 years is a half the time, and B is enough time to have like you have a core you can work with and hopefully go for the cup a few times. I agree with you in the sense that actually I'll disagree with you in the sense that I would pay a goalie over 10 million. I would never pay a goalie for more than 10 years. That's I think the big I think that would be a hotter take is I, see, but I don't know because like at the same time some goalies deserve like Carey Price needed to get paid $10 million because there's no way he wanted
Absolutely.
anything less. But
Absolutely. It just won't be on my hockey team. He can go make
I
$10
just
million
think
dollars somewhere else.
I think what Bergevin fucked with that trade was he did it for 10 years. With you, no one's going to take that contract. If it were 5 year, $10 million, he can regress, he can get an injury, and you can get rid of that contract after 5 years. You know, like Matthews becomes a UFA in 5 years. Who know? In 4 years, who knows where he's gonna go? Like if he resigns or not. But that's the thing is we didn't sign him to a stupid like 10 year, 11.5 million because we don't know what the hell he's gonna be in 3 or 4 years.
Here's why I'm saying what I'm saying. It's because,
Okay.
obviously you have a limited salary cap in the NHL.
Yes, this is a fact.
And so in order to build a winning team, you need to have a lot of elite players around you. And so my argument is, based on what I have seen, it's that an elite goalie can take a mediocre team only so far, whereas an elite team with a mediocre goalie can go a lot further. And so,
Right.
and when I look at some goalie decisions, for example, the reason Florida haven't been negatively impacted yet by the Bobrovsky signing is because their elite players, Barkov and Huberdeau, are being severely underpaid.
Yes, that I agree, and they're playing way out of their heads right now.
Exactly. If Barkov and Huberdeau were making $10 million a year, which is what they deserve to be making, and what they will be making when their contracts expire, they would not be able to afford Bobrovsky's contract and then build a winning team around that. Here's maybe where my take gets even hotter. If I was the Tampa Bay Lightning, I wouldn't have re-signed Andrei Vasilevskiy.
Oh my good God, what are you thinking? He has the best save percentage and the best record. He went shutout for 3 straight games, and you're still saying he wouldn't get re-signed.
Yes, because here's what is the consequence of Vasilevskiy re-signing. The only reason the Tampa Bay Lightning are under the salary cap right now is because Nikita Kucherov is on injured reserve.
Which is a smart play by them.
Oh, 100%. But Nikita Kucherov isn't going to be an exclusive, he's not going to be a only playoff type of guy. We're going to just scratch him in the regular season every single year. Right?
Oh, no, I get that.
And so, okay, so then let's take a look. I'm pulling up the Tampa Bay Lightning's contract, or I'm looking at the Tampa Bay Lightning's cap situation. Going into next season, the Tampa Bay Lightning will be $3.5 million over the salary cap. Over the salary cap when, for example, Kucherov's salary counts against the cap. And that will be with Curtis McElhinney, Cal Foote, Alexander Volkov, Barclay Goodrow, Blake Coleman, all expiring contracts.
Oh, boy.
So that goes to my point, right? I'm not saying that Andrei Vasilevskiy isn't worth $9.5 million. It's just that when I look at the Tampa Bay Lightning, right, I would rather have Blake Coleman, Barclay Goodrow, Nikita Kucherov, Cal Foote, all signed, all on my team, with a goalie not as talented as Vasilevskiy, but and I'd rather have that team in front of an average goalie than have Vasilevskiy in front of a team without Kucherov, Goodrow, Coleman, and Cal Foote. That's my argument.
All right, I mean I can't really argue with that. That's a problem for Tampa Bay.
And that's why I think that Tampa Bay did a very good job of winning the Cup last year. And I think this year is, I'm not going to say that their window's closed, but what I'm going to say is that 2 years ago when they got swept, it was clear they were the most dominant team in the NHL. Last year when they won the Cup, it was very clear they were the most dominant team in the NHL. I'm going to go on record saying this year they are clearly the most dominant team in the NHL. next year they'll still be good, but I don't think they will be, I think right now Tampa Bay is like in a tier all their own, and then the second tier you have like Toronto, Colorado, Vegas, like those types of teams. But Tampa
Yeah.
Bay's in a league all their own. I don't think that's going to be the case next year because they're going to have to figure out this cap situation and they're going to lose some really good players. And I'm not blaming that on Vasilevsky at all. It's just that if I'm a general manager, the way I would approach team building is I would always favor the team in front of the goalie over the goalie himself. Because I've seen year on year, Carey Price drags his team to a conference finals, but never beyond that. Henrik Lundqvist drags his team to a Stanley Cup finals, can't win it. I've never seen a goalie single-handedly win a team a Stanley Cup, where I have seen teams win Stanley Cups with a good goalie or an average goalie. The Penguins and Capitals won Stanley Cups, the Penguins and Blues won Stanley Cups with their goalie on a rookie contract. Braden Holtby wasn't making a whole lot of money when they won their Stanley Cup. And you can even go before that, like Corey Crawford wasn't making a ton of money on the Chicago Blackhawks, and maybe Jonathan Quick is going to prove me wrong. I'm just going to look up his contract history, but I believe that Jonathan Quick wasn't making a ton of money until after he won his Stanley Cups in
2012 and 2014.
in 2012 and 2014. I'm just going to double check that to make sure I'm correct. And actually, Jonathan Quick's only making $5.8 million right now. He signed a 10-year deal at $5.8 million a year in 2013-2014, the first year where they won the Stanley Cup. When they won the Stanley Cup in 2012, he was making 1.8. So actually, Jonathan Quick
that
falls
10-year 5.5. That's so much better than like 10 and 10.
Jonathan Quick falls right into my perfect example. 5.8 million, yeah, okay, it's 800,000 more than what I said about 5 million. I'm not gonna like literally stick to 5 million as like an exact price point, right?
Yeah.
Like if, for example, if I'm negotiating with Jonathan Quick and I offer him 10 years at 5 million, he says, how about 10 at 5.8? I'm not gonna be a moron and be like, no, my principal is 5. Like I'm gonna say yes to 5.8, right? But my point is you look at that contract, you look at the teams that have won the Stanley Cup, they've done it without paying their goalie a whole lot of money.
You're right. 100% agree with you. So does that mean Freddie, we're gonna win it this year as Toronto because Freddie's only getting paid 5.5?
Yeah, and that's why I don't think that the Leafs should re-sign Frederik Andersen, because he's going to want $7 or $8 million a year minimum. And you know what? I know it's going to suck, and Leafs fans love Freddie, but you have to say, okay, you can go make $7 million elsewhere because you're not going to make $7 million here. Especially with the Leafs, because their whole cap situation is even more beyond fucked because they're paying all their players $11 million a year, but we don't have to get into that.
No, yeah, we don't have to get into that at all. Okay, my final hot take of the day. The Toronto Blue Jays will win the AL.
Okay. I think that's certainly not impossible, but I definitely would call that a hot take. Explain to me why they're better than the Rays and Yankees.
No, I won't. I'm just kidding. Rays got rid of their big pitcher, Blake Snell. Kevin Cash is a moron, first off. That team is getting paid next to nothing, and Kevin Kiermaier deserves to be paid. And then we look at the Yankees. Obviously, the Yankees are so good with Judge, Stanton, and then they got Garrett Cole and Corey Kluber. However, I think the Jays are probably the most complete team in that division. Sure, there's a lot of questions on pitching and their starting rotation. Ace Hyun-Jun Ryu will not be able to carry the load the entire season, so that's why they're going to rely on Steven Matz, Nate Pearson, and all these other guys who Robbie Ray I think is coming back. I think they're going to rely heavily on these guys because they're younger. Pearson's only in his second year. And I think if he has a good year under Ryu, then I think they'll be able to have somewhat of a decent pitcher as a backup. Their core, Vladdy, Bichette, Biggio, probably the best core one of the best cores in baseball. And then you bring in guys, and then you have Teoscar Hernandez, then you have Lourdes Gurriel Jr., and then you bring in George Springer in the biggest contract ever signed by a Blue Jay. I think Springer just made it a complete team. I 100% think it just made it a 100% complete team. And do I think the Jays? I have the Jays losing to the Dodgers in the Super Bowl. Now, the reason why I have that is
World
in
Series,
the
but
World
yes,
Super
yes.
Bowl. Oh my God, yes, the World Series. Um, because I think that the Jays are the most complete team. My only concern is the playoff experience or lack of. But I think when push come to shove, this young core is going to really develop. My biggest issue is can they stay healthy and can they play the 162 games? Obviously, I believe so because Vladdy loses 42 pounds to get into shape. Kirk, the big guy, the big catcher who was there last year, he's lost a significant amount of weight and he looks really good. Um, I just think the Jays are the most complete team in the AL, and I just don't see anybody. I don't see I mean, you can make an argument for Tampa Bay and New York, but I just think they're going to be the best team in that division.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing I'll say in response to that is it's a really exciting time to be a Blue Jays fan again.
Oh, yeah, you know what? It reminds me of the 2015 season.
Yep, yep. Except we're a lot younger this time instead of, that season we had some veteran guys who just exploded and
Yeah.
like Bautista was like Jose Bautista is hilarious to me because in the first 5 years of his MLB career he was like statistically like one of the worst hitters in the history of baseball, and then came to the Blue Jays and then just changed his swing and then hit 50 home runs a year for like 5 years straight, which was like
Yeah.
it's actually insane how that just like casually happens. You see, I it's a hot take for sure. Is it possible? Absolutely. I think that like you said, if Ryu has a Cy Young caliber season like he did last year, if Nate Pearson is as good as everyone says he is and can show that because he's still very young, like you said, if the bullpen and the depth starting pitching can be effective, and then if the core young players, so like the Bichettes and the Vlad Guerrero Juniors, can continue to show progression at the major league level, then I think it's possible. Absolutely. I still think the Yankees are the favorites in the division. Um, like you said, I agree with you in terms of the playoff inexperience. I think it's possible that the Blue Jays win the division, but then the Yankees go further in the playoffs. Like, I think it's still, I definitely get where you're coming from. You make a compelling argument. I think it is definitely possible. This team actually reminds me a lot of like the Atlanta Braves when
Right.
they paid, oh my God, I'm going to blank on their names now. Um, Oh my goodness. Ronald Acuna Jr. and
Yep.
the other guy, Marcelo Zuna, I believe it is. I might be
Mm,
wrong with the second guy. But the,
we're
the,
not.
the Braves had two young players, Acuna and then another guy, and they paid them massively.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, why? He's played, well, he was a rookie. And then the both of them exploded in their second year, and the Braves made the playoffs, won their division, were spectacular. That can absolutely happen with the Blue Jays this year. So it's definitely possible. I just think that and it's an unfair advantage if you're the Yankees, and that's going to get into my third hot take actually.
Wow.
It's funny how I went into baseball as well. But it's so hard to beat a team that just has unlimited money that they can throw at literally every single elite player, and
Well, look
so
at the Dodgers.
exactly. So I'm going to say that it is possible, but unlikely, but definitely possible.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. What's your final hot take?
The MLB needs to add a salary cap.
Yeah. There. I don't think there's a hot take there. Look at the Dodgers. Should have won for the past 10 years and only
And
won one.
yeah, and that's why maybe I'll just go into another hot take quickly because I don't think this is really a hot take. It's more just like I think the pandemic has shown even more so the fact that the Rockies, when trading away their best player, Nolan Arenado, also included $50 million in the trade.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
It's like you said, it really is a two-team league at this point. It's the Dodgers and the Yankees, and
Hmm.
it's either they're going to play like they're capable of, or they're going to find a way to choke, and another team's going to come up instead. But yeah, there's realistically only a couple of teams that can afford to put a championship team out there. And sure, can a team like the Tampa Bay Rays make the World Series by doing insane Moneyball tactics and fielding a fantastic team with like very little money? Absolutely. But then, like you said, what happens? All those players get $300 million contract offers from the Yankees, and they say, I'm going to go play there next year. And so it's unsustainable. Like if you're a Tampa Bay Rays team, you'll maybe have like a period of like 1 year with these players, and then they go leave
Yeah.
elsewhere,
And then
right?
they have to go elsewhere because they're not going to get paid.
Look, and in salary cap leagues, do you have players who demand a trade because they don't want to play in a certain market? Sure. But at least because of the salary cap, you know, the New York, I was going to say the Knicks, but the Brooklyn Nets, sure, they can have a lot of elite players, but now the Nets are like up against the luxury tax. They can't add anybody else. Right? Like, sure, the
Right.
Lakers can have a super team with 2 elite players, 3 elite players. Sure, the Warriors can have 3, 4 all-stars, but they can't, then get another guy. Where literally, if the Yankees want to buy another player, they just ask their owner for another $200 million, and the owner says, sure, and there you go.
There you go. You have your player locked up.
And that's why, like, honestly, when it comes to the Blue Jays, like you said, I'll watch the Blue Jays when they're good, but, like, if you're a fan of a small market baseball team, like, I apologize. Like, and the reason like I'm only aware of this is because, like, when you're a huge, like, I'm a huge Penguins fan, so I get like a lot of Penguins, like, or Pittsburgh, like, media on like my social media and stuff. If you're a Pittsburgh Pirates fan, I am so sorry. But, like, they don't have any money. Like, they don't have a budget. They can't be competitive because they're working with a tenth of the amount of money that the Yankees and Dodgers have. So what happens when
Yeah.
they have a good player? They have him for 2 or 3 years. Then when they realize they have to pay him $25 million a year, $30 million a year, and can't afford it, they trade him for prospects. And then when those prospects develop, they trade them for more prospects. And this cycle continues. And you wonder why the Pirates lose 100 games every single year. So MLB needs a salary cap to be competitive. But yeah, once again, maybe another hot take that I had that I can briefly talk about, and this is more so. Once again, you can call me biased, but I think I could statistically make this argument. Fred VanVleet should be on the first team all defense at the end of the season ahead of Ben Simmons. I know that the NBA is going to vote Ben Simmons as the point guard for all defensive first team. It should be Fred VanVleet.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I think Fred VanVleet, after somewhat of a rocky start to the season, I think the whole Raptors organization had a very rocky start to the season. But I agree. I think it's because because the NBA shits on Toronto teams. Do you know why? So I go to school. For those who don't know, I go to a special kind of prestige college here in Toronto just for sports broadcasting. Do you want to know why the main reason is that people don't like playing on the Raptors? Do you want to know?
Let's hear it.
Actually, take a guess. What do you think it is?
I have no idea in
And,
terms of
and
like why players don't want to play or why like the media doesn't give them respect.
why players do not want to come to Toronto? It's very simple. Once
Tax.
I tell you, you're gonna be so pissed.
Taxes?
Nope,
What is it?
we don't have ESPN.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
That's legit the only reason. That's really the only reason why they don't want to play in Toronto. We don't have ESPN,
Well,
so
yeah,
they
that
can't
makes
watch
sense because like,
basketball.
well, it's not only that, but it's like when the Raptors are only talked about in the American media when they're genuine NBA title contenders.
Yeah,
Before 2017, when the Kawhi Leonard trade was made, the only talk about the Toronto Raptors was they were calling them like chokers and like in LeBron's shadow. Yeah, they never complimented the Raptors until
nah.
the year that they won the championship, and even then, I don't
Even then,
think
they were still.
anyone bet on them to win those playoff series. They just
And
kept
even
doing it.
and even when they won, they're like, "Oh, KD was out. Oh, Clay was out." They never gave the Raptors the credit they deserved.
And then the last year when they were coming in as defending champions, just because we lost Kawhi, people had us missing the playoffs altogether. Those
Yeah.
NBA analysts who are paid to know basketball. And so that's why I believe that when random American journalist guy goes down and writes his ballot for all defensive teams, and he thinks about point guards, he's gonna just think about Ben Simmons and say, okay, yeah, he had a good defensive year and put him down. Where statistically, Fred VanVleet's averaging 1.7 steals per game and zero point 0.8 blocks per game as a point guard. Or
Yeah.
shooting guard, because, Kyle Lowry. But he's a point guard turned shooting guard. He's what, like 5'10"? Okay, not actually. He's like what, 6'1", 6'2"? He's short for guard. Like, he's blocking almost a shot per game as a guard, as a small guard. Raptors are statistically one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. A lot of that has to do with the fact that Lowry and Van Vliet are, top defensive players. And so here's the thing. Maybe the one advantage that he'll have is that they'll consider him a shooting guard, and, Simmons will be the point guard and Van Vliet will be the shooting guard on the all-defensive team. And maybe they'll find a room for both of them. But, like, Fred Van Vliet deserves to be a first-team All-NBA defensive, like,
I'm with
first-team
you.
All-NBA defense.
I'm with you. They just won't give it to him because he plays north of the border.
No, absolutely. And then on top of that, just briefly, I think Bradley Beal honestly has a legitimate case for MVP this year.
Well, he's done absolute wonders with the team he plays on, obviously. I agree. I think he definitely has a huge case and a very good case to be MVP for the year.
He just set the NBA record for most consecutive games scoring 40 points in a game while his team loses.
But you never would have known because the NBA sucks off LeBron like it's no one's business.
And he wasn't an all-star last year?
Yep.
I don't understand that. I don't understand that. The guy's had 12 40-point games this year, and his team has lost all 12 of them.
Yeah, well, welcome. I believe he's on the Rockets, yeah?
He's on the Wizards.
Wizards, my bad. Yeah, welcome to Washington.
Yeah, and I mean, someone's got to trade for him, or like he's got to go to. And once again, I literally just talked about how baseball needs a salary cap so there can be more competition. But like, the Wizards have had how many years with Bradley Beal to try to do something with him, and they just haven't done it.
No, and they never will.
Yeah, I mean,
they never will.
I really don't see them doing much, especially because the East isn't even that good this year. Like an East team could make a playoffs with a losing record this year.
You know what? I say half the teams will at least make it with a losing record.
Or like right around 500. Because if you look at the standings right now, the Raptors are below 500. They're 17 and 19, I believe, and they're in like the 6th seed or something.
They're in the 8th seed. Yeah.
They're in the 8th seed now. Yeah, you see, I haven't checked the standings like recently, but all I know is that the Raptors have been like hovering around 500, but they've also been hovering around like, yeah, so they're 17 and 19. You're right. Okay, so the Heat are 18 and 18, and they're the 6th seed in the East. Meanwhile, the Memphis Grizzlies are 16 and 16, 500, and they're the 10th seed in the West. So, like, this is an opportunity for a team that is, like, mediocre or, like, around 500 to make the playoffs in the East. And then
make some noise in the playoffs.
Exactly. And then even with that and Beal putting up 40 points a game pretty much, the Wizards still can't do anything. So, I definitely agree.
That's absurd. That's ridiculous.
Yeah. And so with that, I think any final words that you want to say?
I think we've covered everything. I actually think we're good this week.
Yeah, perfect. I just want to say too, Amanda Nunes is an absolute monster. And at this point, I honestly think that she needs to start fighting like the guys in the UFC division because like I think she could take them.
She's absurd. She's incredible.
Like, I think she knocked out like her opponent last night in like a minute and a half. And then also, if anyone's a golf fan and they want to look at Bryson DeChambeau, 370-yard drive.
Was it a hole in one? There's a hole in one, a few hole in ones.
So basically, this one specific hole, there's like a huge lake, and so it's like an L-shaped hole, essentially. And so what people do is they normally drive the ball straight, and then their second shot they like shoot towards the left, so like that L shape.
Yeah.
Because he has such power in his swing, And first of all, let me just like clarify the statement. I honestly I hate him as a person. I think he's like arrogant, like really disrespectful, annoying person. But like you have to respect his ability. So instead of shooting straight and then left, this guy just shoots it directly over the lake, like straight, like instead of shooting straight, diagonal, right over the lake. 370-yard drive. Lands right in, like just in front of the green on a par 5 first shot. Absolutely unreal swing. If anyone, ESPN was like talking about it, which is like, it's a good golf shot when ESPN talks about it. And so I just had to point out that like that's an absolute monster of a golf shot.
Yeah, you're right there.
But yeah, other than that,
I think
enjoy the COVID All-Star game.
Oh God. Who's winning?
I don't even know who's on what team, to be honest with you. But all I know is LeBron drafted Giannis, and like I'm not going to bet against that.
Yeah. I don't think it's a good idea to bet against Giannis and LeBron.
Yeah, exactly. So you know what? With that, we need like some crazy like stupid hot take. Like I said, Kevin Lankinen would get like 7 shutouts in a row or something last week. Which like I'm not gonna double check. I'm just gonna assume that happened because obviously it happened.
Yep, it happened. 100. He actually got 9. Do you know that?
Hey, Marc-Andre Fleury at this point. If anyone was gonna get 7 shutouts in a row, the guy's an absolute monster.
Yeah, he's playing. He's making a huge commitment to that starting role. Who knows what happens when Leonard gets back?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, they got to keep rolling with Fleury at this point. And he was on the Pat McAfee show, and Pat McAfee said he'd donate $100,000 to his charity if he scored a goal this year. So look for Fleury to start shooting at some empty nets.
Who knows? This year out of all years.
There you go. There's my bold prediction. Marc-Andre Fleury scores a goal this year.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. A goalie goal is always a lot of fun.
You remember the last one who did it?
Was it Pecorine or did someone get one? It was Pecorine. Yeah. I know that in the Penguins game the other night, it's not a goalie goal, but it was equally funny. Of like, how a couple of weeks ago Tuukka Rask went to the bench and then like it was a tie game and came back.
Yeah, Carter Hart.
Yeah, so Carter Hart. At least the Flyers were down by 1, so he was right to pull the goalie. But he starts skating to the bench, and then Pittsburgh gets the puck back, so he starts skating back to the net. And then Cody Ceci shoots from center, and Hart can't get back in time, and he like dives for it. And can't make the save, and the Penguins score on the empty net. But it looked so weird because the camera wasn't like panning there. So like. Yeah. I'm watching the game and I see the Flyers like coming through the neutral zone, and then I see Cody Ceci shoot from center, and then it pans and Carter Hart's just like trapped at the blue line diving for the puck. I'm like, where the hell is he? And then they show the other replay and you saw him skate to the bench, and then halfway there realizes, oh shit, I need to get back because the Penguins have the puck now. It was pretty funny to watch.
Good stuff.
And then Brian Elliott played the next 2 games.
Yeah. All right,
but
man,
yeah.
Good.
We thank you guys for listening to another episode. If you're listening on YouTube, give it a thumbs up. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Music, give us a follow and a 5-star review. That'd be much appreciated. And we'll see you back next week for another episode. Thanks.